Look, I did what Jordan Peterson said. I cleaned my room. Hello, and welcome to all 17 people who watch this. To all those who don't know me, in case this video draws in people I don't know, I'm Dylan Rogers, songwriter, YouTuber, and now I guess political commentator, I think. In this video I want to talk about the current state of New Zealand politics and the election, which, if this video comes out on time, will be tomorrow. Now, I have been dead silent on politics and everything for the last, year or two? Well, pretty much this year, and I don't think I talked much, at least on social media, about it last year. But I don't know, those of you who've followed me for a few years might know that, like, back in 2020, 2021, maybe more so, I occasionally, every now and again, would, like, do a story or whatever where I'd just, like, post a paragraph about what I thought about things going on, or I may make a post or whatever. I got myself into a few comment feuds, one with Royster59 over a picture he took with Lil Wayne and Donald Trump. So I have dabbled in this kind of thing. But I have taken a massive break from it. I have gotten much smarter. I've fleshed out my opinions on it. I'm much more articulate than I was. So I feel like I'm much more prepared, and also I've matured a lot. Like, I was only 16, 17 when this was happening. I'm now 19, and able to think about things in a much more, like, adult light. Now, brief on me and my views as well as any potential bias, I am fairly right wing on a majority of issues, which makes me look far right through the lens of a central New Zealander, which, let's face it, sits on the left overall. Now, you'd think that in an increasingly left wing society, I'd be hated for my politics, and not very popular amongst my own generation and conversation. However, having many unique viewpoints has seemed to make me more popular amongst my peers, although less popular amongst the English department at school. That's another topic I'll get to in a bit. And that's probably a good segue into my first point, and that is the alarmingly close ties between politics and education. Now, education wasn't even a talking point in any of the debates I watched, despite it being a top 5 issue in this country, at least in my opinion. And there are many reasons for this. One being that the current party in power decides the direction of education, but also controls the media. And given that TVNZ is funded directly by the government, it's fair to assume the questions were designed not to severely damage the image of the party in power. Ignoring this issue overall gives them a clear opportunity to continue what they're doing. Now, the effects these ties have on education is mainly on what kids are taught and how. Namely, one example where a friend of mine in Auckland said around the same time the conversation about lowering the voting age opened up, his high school started handing out Labour Party pamphlets to students when they visited the school office. And this is an indirect example, may not be true, but pretty believable given my own experiences over the last few years, mostly 2020 and onwards. But I look back and remember biases being instilled as early as 2016 when National was still in power, so it's not just Labour that's the issue here. The biases from 2016 to 2018, however, were mostly just teachers forcing you to believe Trump is an evil, racist, sexist, orange Oompa Loompa who's going to blow up North Korea and ultimately the world. That clearly did happen. But after the Christchurch mosque shootings on March 15th, 2019, the pendulums shifted big time, and nearly overnight, fandoms for Jacinda Ardern started popping up after the way she handled it, which I'll do a whole separate video on if this by some miracle gets 100 likes. She was a superstar, and teachers and schools made sure that you knew this by telling you every 5 seconds that what she did was brave and heroic, and so good for the direction of this country. The team of 5 million. By this video, you can probably tell I disagree. Anyway, 2020 rolled around, and now there's a dangerous flu spreading around the world, and Jacinda stepping in as a hero again. Decided to put the whole country on full lockdown because 7 people out of 5 million had this flu. Yeah, I'm not kidding. 7. 7 whole people. Like, my family plus 2. Or basically just my direct household, if you include the cats as people. There's not very many. In schools, they started preaching how we did better than any other country because we went hard and early, although quite obviously it didn't mean too much in the long run. Then the 2020 election came around, and I can remember distinctly being called racist and dumb, by a teacher because I wanted national over Labour. And keep in mind, I had just turned 16 and had barely dipped my feet into politics yet. I just knew that National's economic policies were a better long-term solution. And students were doing the same, laughing at me for wanting National in, which in 2017 was perfectly normal for both sides. Like, it would more so be like, yo, you're voting Labour, hey, I'm voting National. Hey, you're voting National, I'm voting Labour. Alright. And it wasn't really much of a deal breaker in people communicating with each other. In the end, Labour won a landslide election and had another 3 years in office. Also, I was mocked for wanting Trump in over Biden in America, but that's another story for another day. Over the next couple of years, the teaching of why Labour was good increased, and students were straight up yelled at by teachers if they disagreed even slightly. Late 2021 rocked around, and after being shut out from my friend group for being transphobic, right, I made an English speech that shattered everybody's minds. Not just in my class, but my entire year level. And the reason it did so is because I went after PC culture and the damage it's doing to our society, and students, despite disagreeing, thought it was a bold decision and quite ballsy to say the stuff that I said openly. Namely that I opened up the speech with a black guy joke, and called Jacinda Ardern a mentally unstable communist horse. Why did the black guy walk into the bar? Hear the roar! My only regret is that I wasn't as articulate as I am now, nor thought out, so some ideas were still a little sloppy in parts. But the overall message stands true. The English department refused to mark it because I am a racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ism-obic, everything you can think of under the sun piece of work. Direct words from the head of English himself. I, of course, got the last laugh because it had proven my beliefs on the political ties with education correct. And had proven that they do teach kids things that make them think a certain way politically. And I think it's quite scary. And is why if I raise kids in this country, I'm homeschooling them myself, so they don't get indoctrinated by these hooligans. And now, point 2. Young people and their stupidity. Now, I'm not going to script this any further because I'm running out of time here. So, that's literally what I wrote on the page. This is on the fly. Anyway, young people and their dumbness. Now, I already kind of got a dummy run because I actually, believe it or not, this is the second time recording this video. The entire thing, turns out, was not registering any audio, so it was basically just like a silent thing of me going. But anyway, it's sorted now, I hope. If I don't get it this go, you're not going to see this video ever. So, don't worry about that. Either that, or I'll just keep on trying and trying and trying, and stay up until fucking 5 AM to finish it. Because I want this out before the election. But anyway, the thing is with young people is too many are thinking more so about a short-term solution for themselves rather than a long-term solution for the country and those around them. And I think it's quite scary when you think about that, and a lot of them are one-issue voters. So they just look at like a Labour policy like, we're raising the minimum wage, and they say, yay, I get more money. And they don't think about the fact that when you raise the minimum wage, that therefore through the supply chain and through the chain of expenses and everything through companies, that increases the cost of everything. Like, the cost of literally everything goes up when the minimum wage goes up. Especially supermarket prices. I mean, you look at the price of things in the supermarket, and yes, they're always going to increase because inflation is always a thing. However, when they're raising the minimum wage, as soon as they ramped up how fast they were increasing the minimum wage, there is also a trend that followed of food prices skyrocketing up. And I remember seeing a report on alarming rises in food prices as early as 2018, so they can't blame COVID for it when it was happening 2 years earlier. Now, obviously, I mean, a lot of people disagree that minimum wage is to blame, and I mean, there are arguments around whether it is completely to blame or just like a small part of it, but regardless, I mean, just through simple logic, it's clear that the minimum wage does have an effect on things. And so when people think that, oh, well, I'm getting more money, that's good. Well, yeah, you're also paying more in the supermarket, and people don't think about that. They think the prices are going to go up regardless, but yes, they are, but not as much. And I think as well that when you've got a duopoly in the supermarket industry, they're able to do that. And especially when a lot of the workers they employ, like half of their workers are working on minimum wage, or at least not far above it. So when they raise the minimum wage, this means that everything they sell goes up in price. And that's hard for people trying to get into homes. People my age, like 19, who are starting to rent or moving out and everything, they're struggling. And they think that, oh, well, yeah, we're giving you more money, or whatever, is just going to help. And the increases in welfare they think is going to help. These raises in taxes, which for some reason nobody really seems to give a shit about. But they all exist. They're all there, but no one in my generation seems to actually think about any long-term repercussions of any of the policies they vote for. They seem to just vote for something based on the face value version of it. Or they'll just vote with their friends, or what they see trending on social media. Or they'll see someone who's younger, or at least acts younger in the case of Chloe Swarbrick, just for them to say, hey, I relate to you, you're a racist piece of shit if you don't vote for this party. And the issue is young people rely too heavily on things like their race, like their gender, like their sexuality. I think that, like, the best progression for society is not for us to overthink about those things. It's not to think about race and gender as, like, a defining thing in who you vote for, like, the way you act. Like, no, you don't, like, this whole movement of, like, let's hate all men. Like, oh, white people are to blame for everything. Like, come on. It's just it's just a different form of racism and sexism, but it's the same mindset. It's this person is different from me, and so they are to blame for my problems. That kind of incentive, I mean, that's literally all the Māori Party are even doing. And I mean, that's probably a good segue into, like, sort of a sub pointer as well, which is, like, that all the parties are bad. Like, at least, well, not necessarily all of the parties, but at least the main six all have their problems. The problems with these main six, I mean, they're all very different. The Māori Party, because they only give a shit about Māori people and straight up just hate white people. They're pretty open about it, and for some reason, like 1 or 2% of the country still thinks that they are the ideal solution for the things, but realistically, it's just a bunch of Māori people who see Māori people and say, hey, I'm going to vote for them because they have my culture's name, even though I could dive into an entire conversation on why they don't even respect their own culture in some places. If you want to hear about that, I mean, I'm only going to do that one if it's requested, though, because I really don't feel like spending an hour talking about that party. Fuck, he was annoying in the debates. But then you got people like the Greens and Labour, which their problems are pretty much the same. The Greens is literally just Labour, but slightly more extreme on everything, especially economy and climate change. They want to tax rich people or whatever more because they don't pay their fair share of taxes, despite the top, like, couple percent paying more than half the taxes in the country. You make $1 million, you're paying a lot more in tax money than someone who's making 40,000. But no, they've got to pay a higher percentage. No, they're already paying a higher amount on the same percentage, so why have a progressive tax system at all? They're paying their fair share. If everyone's paying a particular percentage, that's their fair share. They're paying a certain percentage based on what they got out of society back into the government, which is meant to go towards things to benefit society, although a lot of it is just going to things like benefits and useless subsidies that don't do anything, which, yeah, as national call-out on Labour's part, is wasteful spending. Yes, the subsidies is wasteful spending. The welfare is actually contributing to a much bigger problem, which is incentivizing young people not to work. And not even just young people, but people overall. And it's almost more livable to live off of welfare than it is the minimum wage. And that doesn't mean the minimum wage should go up. That means the benefit should be significantly lowered. And when people say, oh, but people on the benefit aren't even able to live off of that, they shouldn't be able to live off the benefit. Like, the only people who should be able to live off the benefit are people who, like, for instance, right, they're paralyzed from the waist down, they can't move. Like, what the fuck? You're telling me that a perfectly able-bodied person who is able to go out and get a job tomorrow gets to live off of sitting on his ass and getting tax money? Fuck off. Like, seriously. Fuck off. People see it, and when you say, like, oh, you're against welfare or whatever, you're seen as, like, oh, you're discriminated against the poor. And some people, like fucking the Māori Party, call it racist. Which, I mean, is basically saying that all poor people are Māori. Which is, actually self-racism on their own culture, ironically enough, because not all poor are Māori, not all Māori are poor. So, yeah, little bit tough one there. And the Greens agreed with this, obviously. Labour probably do, but they're trying to play the more central game, kind of, even though they still come off as far left. That makes me wonder why young people think of it the way they do. Now, as for the right-wing parties, I've probably given enough criticism to the left-wing ones for now. I mean, issues with National, and why I'm not voting for them at least, is they were flip-floppy around the vaccine mandates and everything. They claimed to be against the way Labour handled COVID, yet they backed all of the lockdowns, literally all the lockdowns they backed. They backed the vaccine mandates for 3 months out of the 5 that they were instilled, which, I mean, come on. Like, you can't just claim you're against the mandates and support them for 3 months. And act, you're not out of this either, because you supported them, yes, for 24 hours, but you still supported them. As for Winston Peters, a reason he can't be trusted, I mean, for God's sake, look at 2017 and the way that all played out. He was meant to pick within a couple days, it took 2 weeks, so he prolonged the election results. He picked the party most likely because Jacinda was going to go on maternity leave, and he could be acting prime minister for like a brief fucking spec. It's funny because he got in there and realized that he actually doesn't have like any prime minister powers while acting prime minister. If you're an acting prime minister and not the official prime minister, you can't really do anything to change any laws, have any power over anyone. You're just kind of there, and your only job is to just speak to the public as the prime minister. That's it. And then Winston Peters obviously went extremely anti-Labour and anti-left this election cycle, which, okay, to be fair, I think is a much better direction for him. He's definitely actually putting the New Zealand first and New Zealand first, but the issue is the fact that you look at his history even just a couple years ago, and it kind of worries me. I don't know if I can trust him very much. Overall, that kind of leaves me. I haven't even decided who I'm going to vote for in the elections tomorrow. So, or at least at the time of recording this, it's tomorrow. For all I know, this could take ages to process and might not even be out until, like, during the day tomorrow. But either way, I want to aim to have this out before, at least before 7 o'clock, before the results will start getting counted and coming in. Now, I think with young people, right, a lot of young people are starting to vote for the minor parties because all the flaws in Labour are becoming more apparent, and they're hearing people more and more be openly vocal about that Labour is destroying the economy. They're starting to think about that. But then they put their votes towards the Greens, which literally have virtually identical policies. Like, and then they act like, oh yeah, we're going to vote for the Greens instead of Labour because Labour is incompetent and ruining our economy. So you're just going to vote for someone who wants to do the same thing but worse? Like, really? Like, is Chloe that convincing? Because she came off as fucking irritating. And I mean, James Shaw, insufferable in his debates, and I mean, don't even get me started on Martin Davidson, like, a holy fucking shit, she's annoying. Yeah, I don't know how that works and why young people think that's the best idea to go for. Like, wouldn't you want to go for a party that, yes, if you're a left-wing or whatever and you want to go for a left-wing party, I mean, hell, National's a left-wing party. Like, National's not even a right-wing party anymore, and people call it far-right and everything. It's not even far-right. I mean, they were in support of transgender children in schools. I mean, that's a far-left belief. That's not even just a left-wing belief. And you're going to tell me that they're a right-wing party for that? Like, hell no. And see, credit where it's due, New Zealand First was somehow the only party that could actually say, hey, that's wrong. Like, really? ACT couldn't say it? National not only didn't say it, but just fucking supported it, straight up said, like, hey, we need to figure out solutions to help make sure these children feel comfortable in it. Like, what the fuck? I'm not saying make them feel terribly uncomfortable, but I mean, there's mental issues there. It's not just like, yeah, you're that gender, whatever, go in whatever bathroom you want. Here, we'll give you a private one, in fact. No, what the hell? There's a underlying mental issue there. Like, we need to get to that. And when they say, oh, you're killing children, which was the words of Chloe Swaber, you're killing children or whatever. No, what's killing children is ignoring the mental issues that they clearly have that led them to believe they are a different gender. If you believe truly that you're a different gender, you have mental issues. Simple as that. And I don't think that means that you're an evil person or that you need to be exterminated, but I do think that, like, we need to actually have incentives to help deal with those underlying mental issues that led to that. Because that's the real problem. That's what's killing people. It's the mental issues underlying. This was young people love to rope that under LGBT, love to parade that shit around, and love to act like, oh, I'm being inclusive by this. And don't get me wrong, no problem with gay people, but I don't think that it should be, first of all, forced on the children, especially like fucking younger children. Like, I think post puberty, like in high school era, maybe you could like bring it up. I mean, hell, I'm not objective to like someone figuring out they're gay on their own terms through high school, because that's when you start like having sexual thoughts, sexual feelings, or whatever. But like instilling it on prepubescent children is like just absolutely disgusting. It's perverse. It's like absolutely wrong. And most gay people won't say it because they feel like it goes against their own community, which I don't even believe in, like the whole community. Like, I believe you're an individual. Think for yourself. And most gay people, like behind closed doors, when they're not around activists and everything, most of them will tell you that they don't believe in instilling it for young children. The only ones that really do are the ones who are only supporting it because they want to look like an activist. They don't actually truly care. If you truly care, you draw particular boundaries. You don't just say, let's just expand it everywhere, otherwise we can't expand it anywhere at all. That's not true. Also, can we please stop saying that everyone who votes for National is a racist because of the healthcare system? Like, really? When they say that they don't want a separate Māori healthcare authority, that's because they see Māori as regular people. They don't see them as like a completely different culture that needs to be treated differently because of it. People like the Māori Party and Labour and Greens or whatever, all these parties that are supporting the separate healthcare authority, that's because they see you as different because of your race. They're the ones being racist about it by instilling the health authority. You know, to be fair, when people say, oh, we have whatever, like slower waiting times, oh, we don't always have Māori healthcare providers or whatever. Cool. Then why don't, like, some are, like, when you say, oh, Māori are disproportionately on welfare, can you not, like, why don't some of them get educated, get degrees to become nurses and stuff, so that they do have jobs, they are getting paid, they're off welfare? Do you know how many like, that would immediately solve multiple problems at once, because you're getting people off welfare, you're, like, breaking apart that barrier of disproportionate stuff, and you don't need a separate healthcare authority to feel like you fit in. Because, truthfully, I mean, the way I see it is that we are all people. I don't think, like, having separate authorities for colour helps any of that. And the truth is that when you look at things like, yes, there are disproportionate percentages of things, but it's not always just because racism. You can't just point racism as soon as there's a difference. Like, sometimes there are different reasons for it, and you got to look at disproportions in other areas, such as education, poverty levels. Sometimes it can be culture itself, because you look at the way, like, for instance, Māori people are encouraged to, like, sometimes, especially when they listen to people at the Māori Party, they're encouraged to see white people as colonials who just took their land and rule over them. Nobody alive today in this country was even alive during the Treaty of Waitangi. None of us had anything to do with anything the British did to you guys 200 years ago. And believe it or not, 99% of white people in the country now, they don't like British colonials. I wasn't part of it. I've never killed a Māori person. I've never done any harm to one. So why are you saying that all white people are like colonials or whatever? Don't trust them as much. Trust us, because we are your people. Our people, our people, our people, our people. Our people, our people, our people. That's all he was in the debate.
Well, first of all, Te Pāti Māori is the only tangata whenua party in this race. Tangata whenua. Māori to harm our people. Māori, it's about going back to our people to ensure that we get the best gains for our people. Māori, you need Indigenous knowledge. Only Indigenous knowledge is mātauranga Māori, and Indigenous knowledge, these Indigenous peoples, that's putting more pressure on our people.
Rawiri Waititi, why do non-Māori typically have such better outcomes?
Because the settings of this country has created that. We're not here on accident, we are here by design. That you could govern over your own people.
Rawiri Waititi, as a proportion of the population, should Māori have different rights and representation to non-Māori?
These are treaty rights. This is what Tiwi Māori expect. These are about the rights of tangata whenua. A Māori authority is not going to hurt anybody.
Also, why did the Māori Party get free seats in Parliament just for being Māori? Like, I know that everyone on the left is going to argue, like, hey, but they're entitled to it because there's not enough representation of them. Like, really? Okay, fine then. If you don't see there being enough representation for them, vote for them. And the thing is, a lot of the people arguing that, they're all voting Labour, they're voting Greens. Okay, if you give too much of a shit, if you want the Māori Party to have seats in Parliament, why don't you just vote for them to give them the seats in Parliament? I wouldn't recommend it because they're a terrible fucking party, but like, come on, it's your vote. If you want to get them in Parliament, that's why you vote for them. That's how democracy works. Aside from my whole little sub-rants and sub-arguments, I think young people, please, 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 stop doing what you think is trendy. Stop doing shit for activism. Stop voting because your friends said, oh my god, you should vote for this, otherwise you're this, this, and this, and this. Don't believe in all those fucking buzzwords and bullshit. And don't vote on short-term policies for yourself. Look at long-term policies for those around you. And don't sit on your ass. If you want something, work for it. Put in effort for it, right? Actually do something. Because you can't just expect it to be handed to you on a silver platter. All in all, I think, yeah, stop voting because of all of those reasons, right? Vote because you believe in the long-term successes, right? You believe in the success of the country and not just yourself. And please, look, I'm not going to tell you to vote for, but don't vote the Māori Party, please. Please, please, please don't vote them. Anyway, happy voting. Feel free to leave a comment below of your thoughts or any topics you want me to cover, because I guess I do this now. Also, you can DM me on Instagram at _Dylan_Rogers_ if you want to discuss anything political that I couldn't cover today, because I'm always open to discussion. Anyway, enjoy the election, have a good night, or day, whatever time it is for you right now. See ya.